There's no way he has 1,000 rushing yards this year.
I'm not tubby, but I'm a little tubby.
Wow, that's wild.
This is Loudly Mistaken. I don't know, some theme music there, probably. Hello! Welcome back to
Welcome
Loudly
back.
Mistaken. Yeah! We made it! A second session! I mean, I know. Whew. Oh,
I didn't think
man.
we'd make
Welcome
it this
back.
far.
I don't know. I don't know if anyone's listening out there, but if you are, it is Friday, September 2nd. This is Loudly Mistaken. You are not mistaken. You're in the right place. We're mistaken. I'm one of your hosts, Brayden Welch, and I'm joined today by my co-host, the man, the myth, the legend, the guy who says that Rodrigo Blankenship would beat Pat McAfee in a fight. It's Gavin Queen. Gavin, how you doing?
Hey, Pat, don't come after me. You're a WWE superstar, but Rodrigo's got you because you do the fake stuff.
I mean, Rodrigo's the real deal, right?
He is.
I mean, he's built like DK with the mind of just Professor X. Like the dude's awesome. So I don't blame you for saying that, but Pat, he said it, not me. So go after Gavin Queen. I'll give you his
Rodrigo.
address. Just send me a message. I'll give you his address. You can go and mess him up. Great. Well, Gavin, we're here. It's been a week, but we're finally here, dude. I got a question for you. It's been like killing me. Before we get started here. Okay, so I was singing because we talked a lot last week, and I have some other stuff to throw in about last week's conversation. But we talked a lot last week about you brought up quarterbacks, and I got to thinking. Oh wait, you and we grew up with some pretty great quarterbacks of our time, right? We grew up with the Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, right? All these guys. I want to poll you on, in my opinion, ranking some mediocre quarterbacks or mediocre to
Whoa.
quarterbacks, right? Like,
Okay.
okay, so I'm gonna give you 5 guys. You tell me their ranking, then we'll get started. I want to pick your brain here. So,
Yeah.
Matt Ryan,
Okay.
Nick Foles, Joe Flacco, Tony Romo, Eli Manning. Matt Ryan, Nick Foles, Joe Flacco, Tony Romo, Eli Manning, 1 through 5. You got them?
Okay. Am I going starting off with one or starting off with five?
It's up to you. It's up to you. I think we have the same 5,
Okay.
and I would be surprised actually if your 5's not the guy that my 5 is.
Well, I am a huge Tony Romo hater, so number five has to be Tony Romo.
Really?
I mean, he's the only player on this list that hasn't won a Super Bowl. So,
No, Matt Ryan.
okay, he's the only player on this list that hasn't been to a Super Bowl. I always forget Matt Ryan blew that lead. I just, in my head, for some reason, I think that they won that Super Bowl, which they should have. That was, oh man, I don't want to relive
But they
that.
didn't. But they
They did
didn't.
it.
And you
But
know
he's the,
what? My number 5's Nick Foles, man. I mean, Foles can't hold a starting job. He can't. He can't. He's an amazing legend. An amazing legend. But it's
yeah.
the dude lost his job to Gardner Minshew.
Gardner Minshew deserves a starting job somewhere.
Oh, okay, we'll put that on the board too. Oh man, I need a board now. I need a board. Gardner Minshew deserves a starting job. Okay,
I'm
okay.
pretty sure in his career he's thrown like 30 something touchdowns, only like
Hey,
12 interceptions.
hey, Gardner Minshew is this generation's Colt McCoy, and I'll take it. I'll take it.
He's better.
Um, anyways,
Okay,
okay.
Nick
Who's your number
Foles.
4?
Nick Foles is my number four because that historic playoff run. I'm pretty sure he won Super Bowl MVP. He should
Yeah,
have with
he
that
did.
catch.
I've looked it up.
So
Yeah.
I mean that
Okay.
catch it beats all of Tony Romo's career just in that one play. So
I put Romo at 4, so we're debating a little bit there, but I get where you're coming from. Like it's
yeah.
a historic run, it's amazing.
Yep.
I just think talent wise, you can't. Tony Romo is more talented than Nick Foles.
Okay, I can see that. I'm just a Nick Foles or a Tony Romo hater, so I'll put him at
I
number
get it.
five.
I get it. Number 3, I think we have the same number 3, but I'll let you go.
Number three is gonna have to be Joe Flacco. I'm assuming it's the same. Yep. Okay. Good. Good. Yeah, he got carried in a Super Bowl win. Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, and that defense is nasty. And then, I'm a Broncos fan, and he had a pretty short career for the Broncos, thankfully. So wish him all the best
Hey,
on the Jets. He's
dude's
gonna
elite,
have the
man.
starting job,
Dude's
maybe,
elite.
but
Dude's elite. He's
he's
gonna
what?
start. He's elite.
Oh yeah,
He'll start for the Jets until Zach
yeah,
Wilson's back,
yeah.
and they're lucky for that, really,
They
because
really are. Yeah,
it's
they might actually win a game this year.
maybe maybe.
Maybe.
I like Salah. I like Salah. I think they'll win a couple of games, at least three.
Yeah,
You know,
I'll give him two.
no, but yeah, I have Flacco at 3. He has better stats than Romo. Like he did have a really great career for
Yeah, he did.
Baltimore, but I do agree he got carried, which is actually why my guy at number 2 is who it is, and I think you can kind of tell now based off that. But I feel like your 2 is probably Matt Ryan. Your 2,
It
Matty
is.
Ice.
Yeah, it is Matty Ice.
I can't put Eli at the top of this list, man. I
Why
can't.
not?
He's
Why?
not. He's good. He's serviceable. But if Joe Flacco's on those Giants teams, Joe Flacco is sitting here with 2 Super Bowls. It's not. Eli Manning is not that good. Matt Ryan has the skill. Like Matt Ryan's there.
Okay, has Eli Manning won an MVP?
No.
Okay, then you know what? I'll put Matty Ice as my number one then.
Yeah.
And he's still playing, so his stats are just gonna get better. I think he's still got at least 2 more years in the league. We'll see. Might
And
make a run
maybe he
this
has
year.
the Super Bowl. Maybe he'll get carried this year. That
He
defense is
might.
scary for the Colts.
And all you gotta do is hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor, and you can win some games.
Yeah, and Naheem Hines, right? Because Naheem Hines is gonna be the bell cow this year.
Yeah, he's gonna get a lot of work this year for sure.
Totally, 100%.
Hey,
Well,
and
great, dude.
you said you'd rather have Michael Pittman than Jamar Chase this year, so you got to be a Matt Ryan fan.
I don't. Yeah, you're not wrong. I would. He's awesome. He's amazing. And honestly, I trust. Well, anyway, I won't finish that statement because I'll come back to
Yeah,
bite
where's
it.
the
I
board?
know I will.
We need you to put that on the board.
Yeah, I didn't finish it. I'll just put I trust on the board. Just I trust. Um, we're not gonna finish that trail.
Yeah,
Great.
it's too early for that.
Oh no, man. All right, well let's hit some news before we dive into what we're going to talk about today. Which, by the way, we're talking about making sure I did the right thing. We're talking about 5 underrated players now each. So 10 underrated players total. I will say, just a little preface. I didn't go most underrated. I took a couple shots in the dark actually,
Okay.
where it's like, okay, these guys may, I'm not necessarily saying that like they're gonna be the best thing ever and they're being underrated right now. Like these
Yeah.
guys could be some deep sleepers, but as of where they are right now, they're still being underrated
Yeah.
regardless.
I like
So,
that. I like that.
yeah. But before we get to that, let's go over some news. So did you hear today? Actually, literally today, September 2nd, college football playoffs, man, expanded to 12 teams. I know that this is a kind of a fantasy football show, but dude, that's too many to me. It's too
Yeah,
many.
that's
What do you think?
that's big news. I actually agree with you. I think we both think 8 teams is appropriate. 4 teams, just there's too many good teams right now, and you lose a game or two, and you're already out of the college football playoffs. So I think a happy medium is eight teams, and hopefully they get it right next time.
Well, and of course, it's not coming up till 2026, 2025. I think
Okay.
it's 26.
Yeah, 26, I believe.
And so, that's gonna. Of course, that can always be appealed, right? They may turn around and make it 8. But to me, I'm like, you do that, then all of a sudden you're going to get a 3-loss, maybe even a 4-loss team in there.
Yeah.
It's just it's too many games. It's too many games. It's really just creating the bowl system again, just with a couple of extra steps.
I also think, teams were complaining that they were 5 and 6 and weren't making it. And so who's to say the top 15 teams now aren't going to be complaining that, oh, there's only 12. So we'll see how that goes.
Hey, March Madness, college football edition.
Yeah, just week 1 starts the college football playoffs.
Woo, 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 woo. I love that. It's gauntlet. It's like it's It's like a guillotine. Is that?
Guillotine?
I'm blank. Yeah, guillotine. I
Yeah.
can't speak tonight. It's
You're close.
for those listening. It's at 10:30 at 10:30 p.m. in New York right now. So if I get a little crazy tonight, that's why. Um, Man. All right. Well, let's go to some other stuff. We have Trey Sermon getting signed by the Eagles. Well, claimed off waivers. First of all, I didn't expect him actually to get cuts. I mean, I knew they were talking about it, and then of course Lynch came out and was like, "He's the best player in our team this offseason." Of course, then he goes through waivers and then gets picked up. So, did you see that the Eagles actually tried to trade for him?
I didn't, but I mean, this is a classic 49ers situation. I mean, kind of like us, they tell the truth all the time. So you got to believe everything Kyle Shanahan says. Uh, Other than Brandon Ayuk, he was supposed to be the best player in training camp. So I guess they just wanted to gift the Eagles with their best player. I don't know what's going on.
So, what are your thoughts there? You think Miles Sanders, Gainwell should be in trouble? Do you think Sermon's just nothing's going to happen with him? What do you thought?
I thought coming out of the draft, he was just a mediocre prospect. So just add him to the list of mediocre running backs in Philadelphia. Take your pick.
Yeah, it's gonna be. It's gonna. I mean, the best running back there, best rusher, Jalen Hurts, right?
Oh
Best
yeah,
rusher there. I mean,
underrated.
it's rough. It's gonna be rough.
It
All right,
is.
so we also have Kenyon going to the Ravens. It looks like J.K. Dobbins might not be healthy for Week 1. We know that Gus Edwards isn't going to be in there. You
Yeah.
think that, do you think Kenyon Drake's going to get a big Week 1 workload? Do you think it's going to be a just who knows what's going to happen between him, Lamar Jackson, and Mike Davis? Like, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm glad they signed him because this kind of helps my overrated pick of J.K. Dobbins. I don't know if you saw that Twitter video of him doing the bag work and kind of stumbling or hobbling after the play. Not looking too hot right now. So I know they said Mike Davis might be the week 1 starter before. So until there's more news that comes out, I think it's too early to say that he'll get a lot of work. So I would still lean more towards Mike Davis, but maybe third down receiving work because Mike Davis has bricks for hands.
Yeah, but hey, you and I both looked like geniuses because you came in and said J.K. Dobbins was overrated, and I came in and I was like, yeah, you know what? And they love going after veterans. Look at us,
That's true.
Gavin. I mean, we may have had a lot of cold takes last week, but we didn't fail that one.
We
There
got
we
to move
go.
forward.
All right, great. We also have great news here. Obviously, terrible stuff that happened to Brian Robinson.
Mhm.
But we do have great news that he was able to get out, right? Get out of the hospital. And he was walking around on crutches. And he's going to be on the NFI list, so he's out till week 5 at least, right? But they say
Yeah,
that
the
there's
first 4 weeks.
a possible hope that he comes back this season. So that's great. Great news in that way. It's terrible stuff that happened, but
Yep.
great stuff coming out that it looks like he's going to be able to make a full recovery, which is real nice.
Yep. Prayers out to him and his family.
Yep. Great. So, and then we also have finally Sony Michelle going to the Chargers. Are you worried if you're an Austin Eckler owner?
I am actually an Austin Eckler owner, and I'm not super worried. They like to feed Austin Eckler, so I think it's just a little bit of insurance. Um, I actually don't remember who their backups are. Do they still have Justin Jackson there?
I know they have Kelly,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they have Jackson off the top of my head.
I'm not
Um,
either. Probably just trying to get some depth. I'm sure he'll get some carries, but most likely won't be fantasy relevant unless there's an Eckler injury.
to me, my only worry is that you're sitting there adding to the running back room, which you don't necessarily love to see if you're sitting there drafting a guy 102 or 103, right?
Yeah.
Which at some point earlier this offseason, Eckler was going at 102. Now he's typically going 103, 104. To me, at that point, and I'll get into this in my underrated, because I have some honorable mention that I didn't actually touch on that I was going to, and I was like, I can hit some other guys. But to me, at that point, I'm like, I'd rather get a sure thing in a wide receiver rather than go for a running back that is getting up there in age, is getting up there in touches, and seems to, much like everyone dogs Dalvin Cook for getting injured, Eckler seems to get banged up. He's a smaller guy,
Yeah.
and so he does seem to get banged up more often than not. It's just if they're adding to the running back room, I'm a little worried. I'm not I'm not screaming because of Sony Michel, but the fact that they're adding to the running back room does worry me just a little bit.
So do you think Sony will be fantasy relevant this year?
Oh, I lost you for half a second.
Oh. Do you think Sony will be fantasy relevant this year?
No, but no, I mean like I think he'll get maybe 20 yards a game, maybe.
Just a few carries.
Right? Yeah, and maybe he gets goal line work. Like my only thing is Eckler's so touchdown dependent, um, or at least he was last year, right? He had an amazing touchdown rate. So it's that kind of thing of if you're counting on that, it might be a little rough.
Okay. Yeah.
Great. So we're gonna jump into these underrated players in a quick second. We're gonna take a quick 2-second break. Well, for you guys, it'll be 2 seconds. For us, it'll be a couple of minutes, and we'll be right back. We'll see you soon. And we're back. Okay, great. Did you see that the Red Sox beat the Rangers 9-1 today? It's depressing.
That I wish it mattered, but neither of us are gonna make the playoffs. So
Hey, I'll take losses. Get us a top 5 pick. I'll take it. It's gonna be lottery anyways. Maybe we can get number 1.
just so y'all can draft another pitcher from.
Hey, if a
Vanderbilt.
pitcher doesn't have injury issues, then what are we even doing?
Yeah, you won't be drafting them.
Exactly. We need injuries. That's just kind of the Rangers thing.
Yep.
So
Hey, Dallas Keuchel looked really good for y'all tonight.
and that's it for us. No, I'm kidding. Man. Okay. Well, great. Gab, you know what? I started out last time. Let's do some underrated players, man. You want to get us started off?
Yeah, I can start us off. Start us off pretty hot. This player has not played in the past 2 years, so Michael Thomas is my first underrated player, the wide receiver for the New Orleans Saints. Right now, he's currently being drafted as a wide receiver 28, so just outside of a wide receiver 2 range. He obviously has plenty of risk. Like I said, he hasn't played in the past 2 years, but I think part of that is baked into his draft ADP. He has a worse quarterback that throws the ball more, in a sense, in Jameis Winston now. And I think his upside is wide receiver 1. Obviously, he's put up insane numbers in the past, and that was 2 years ago. So if he can get back to even 80% of that for him, then I think you're going to hit, and he's going to be a home run and really reach more than that ADP. So I know they have Chris Olave and Jarvis Landry now, but Jameis Winston sported 2 wide receiver 1s in Tampa Bay. So as long as he cannot throw as many interceptions as he did in Tampa, I think Michael Thomas is pretty safe to hit if he's on the field.
Well, and so I was gonna say, do you have like a number that you think he's gonna hit?
A number of games that he's gonna hit?
Well, no, like overall, what do you think? Wide receiver 14, wide receiver 15?
If he played every game, which I can't predict because he's already got that hamstring injury, but if he did, man, does he have potential to finish as the wide receiver 1 overall? I don't know.
Wow. The 1 overall. To me, okay, I like my players to like playing the game. And there's a little bit of Antonio Brown in the way that he's kind of dealt with. I mean, he was supposed to come back last year. He was, right? He was supposed
a minor
to come
injury,
back
yeah.
And then he just never did, right? And I don't know. To me, I agree. I think that like there's that upside there, right? You could get a wide receiver 1 back, but it's almost what's being cooked in right now is the fact that he literally might not play a single game at all. It's that kind of thing of, I will say, for a guy that might not play a single game, Yeah, I'd much rather have him over a guy like Alvin Kamara, who a suspension, as we know, could come down literally tomorrow. A video comes out and he's gone, right? Literally. So, I get what you're saying. I don't know if I can buy that. I don't know if I can buy that he has wide receiver one. I get it. I get it. Like, maybe. But I think those days are past him.
I would agree, but I mean, you can't hate on Slant Boy too much.
But Jameis doesn't throw slants. Jameis is a deep guy, man. And Olave runs deep.
Okay, so this is my thought. Would you rather have Michael Thomas, who gets injured for 6 games, or would you rather have DeAndre Hopkins, who's suspended for 6 games?
I'd say D-Hop.
Would you?
Only because D-Hop's played the last, he hasn't been out of the game for 2 years. Like, yeah, he had a regression last year, but he had a regression due to injury at the end of the season, but he still played. You know what I'm saying? It's that whole thing of, and honestly, I'm always of the mindset that, like, you get a guy mid-season that's coming in, they're gonna, odds are, fingers crossed, stay healthy, right? They're gonna be refreshed. They're gonna have more stamina for that end season break, which I'll get to fantasy playoff schedule and how important that is a little soon. But yeah, so I would say D-Hop, and D-Hop is going way after MT anyways, and so I think you almost have to cook in that a little bit.
Yeah, I think he's going a few rounds after him. So, where do you think MT could finish if he played every game?
If he plays every game, to me, he finishes, this is going to sound weird, he finishes how everyone thinks Keenan Allen will finish every year. You know how everyone is like, everyone drafts Keenan as like a low-end wide receiver 1 or high-end wide receiver 2, and then he always ends up getting, like, he's way more consistent. Like, he's not a sexy wide receiver at all, but he's way more consistent than everyone wants him to be, or everyone that doesn't have him wants him to be. And so, like, that's where I see MT going, where it's, he'll get you 10 points a week. I could see him go, like, or that's not how Keenan actually is, but how everyone sees Keenan. I could see that's where he is, like, a high-end wide receiver 2, like a guy that's maybe top, if he plays every game, probably like the wide receiver 18.
Yeah.
That's where I see him, so that's where I agree. That's a big, that's great if you can get that at in the 8th round. That's a fantastic draft. The issue is, me personally, I like my guys to like playing the sport of football, which is why I don't necessarily, and sometimes I get burned for it, I don't necessarily draft Aaron Rodgers every year, right? It's like, if a guy can sit there and just be like, oh, I'll sit out. It's Michael Thomas is like the Ben Simmons of football to me, where I have no idea if he's going to show up. Like, I really don't know. I feel like he's good. I think he's good. I know he's good. He's shown that he's all right, but I have no idea if he's actually going to play.
I wonder who has played a game more recently between Michael Thomas and Ben Simmons.
My money's on MT, right? Right?
No,
No.
I think it's close.
I think it's Ben Simmons only because of, like, playoffs.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. I think so.
Wow. Yeah, but you're not wrong. They really. Wow. Yeah. Man. Also, before we get really, like, heavy into this, I'll see if I can share the image on wherever we're gonna. We will post this on a podcast, guys. I promise. I know we're on YouTube right now. We are gonna get this on a podcast. So when you're listening to this on podcast, I'll attach this in the notes. We talked about this last week, so I'll touch on this. I did find a great image that I'll attach here, but I'll also kind of show in the camera, and then we'll talk about it. Look at that. It's an image with the player's name, the amount of touches, the carries, and the age that they've had. It's a chart. And the red is bad. You see who's bad there? Melvin Gordon and Derrick Henry. Here's the thing. Derrick Henry's a beast. He breaks the mold, breaks the system. But I will put that out there. Because
those are like half of the starting running backs in the league on that list.
And I'll read the list for everyone listening right now. It's Ezekiel Elliott, Melvin. So Ezekiel Elliott's at the top with touches. Um, Melvin Gordon, Derrick Henry. Those three are all pretty much Reds all the way. Alvin Kamara, at coming in at 27 years old with 1,285 touches.
Wow.
I mean, it is that thing of his backup's Mark Ingram right now, right? Which I was going to have as an underrated player. He was one of my honorable mentions. Because it's that thing of he could get suspended any minute too, so why not hold on to Mark Ingram? Or at least draft him, because he's going undrafted in most places. But to your, and the reason why I brought that up too is because you were talking about Michael Thomas. It's like, yeah, to your point, Alvin Kamara got a lot of the receiving yards in those years that Michael Thomas was great. So, like, yes, hypothetically, he could be unlocked if Alvin Kamara doesn't see the touches that he normally does. I don't think it's going to happen. For everyone else, you have Joe Mixon on the list with, he's red. So they did, like, this chart in charting when players fall off. If they hit the red, they're after the fall off. So Joe Mixon's after the fall off in touches, carries, but he is 25. Or 26 now, I believe. Dalvin Cook with 1,200 touches, 1,018 carries, both in the red. Leonard Fournette with 1,138 touches in the red. Also, I need to correct myself last week. Leonard didn't have a 1,000-yard rushing season last season. Like, he didn't. He just had a lot of touchdowns and a lot of receiving yards.
Did he have a 1,000 total yards? I would assume.
I believe he did, yeah. But I had mentioned, and as I was watching back the video, I'd mentioned that he had 1,000 yards rushing, so I didn't correct that. Christian McCaffrey in the red, 1,138 touches. He's 26. Then you have Aaron Jones, who's in the orange-ish with 1,005 touches. Nick Chubb with 1,000 touches. Kareem Hunt with, he's more in the yellow, with 948. James Conner at 895, and Austin Eckler at 889. So I'll show this again for those watching on YouTube. I know you have a little bit of a glare. You can see that. Great little, I've been doing some research on Twitter, which is where you get all the best information, obviously. But yeah, so great.
I'm kind of surprised Christian McCaffrey's in the red for touches, considering he's played like 2 games in the past 5 years.
They really fed him when he was healthy. They really fed him. Right. So, anything else on MT you want to touch on? You good?
I think I'm pretty good. I mean, the only thing I would add, other than what I've said, is I think he's got a pretty solid floor. We kind of talked about Alvin Kamara, but I mean, MT is gonna see probably 8 targets a game minimum. So, I think even if you draft him as a wide receiver 28, that's probably going to be his floor if he plays every game.
That makes sense. And but it's always the if for me. If he plays.
Yeah, the if is like a 5% chance he does play every game.
Is he going to wake up tomorrow and say, you know what, like, let's go to Cancun? Why not?
Probably more of a chance than him saying, let's go practice on the football field.
Yeah, it's rough. But speaking of, by the way, practice on the football field. Did you see the preseason catch by Kyle Pitts?
I did not.
Dude, he had like one catch in the preseason game he played, but it was for 52 yards. Like, he just tore the top off the defense. So that's who I'm talking about next. Now, I know he's going off the board at, I believe, tight end 3, 4. Mm-hmm. It's different for every league because sometimes you have Kittle going before him. In earlier drafts, he was going after Kittle. Now he's kind of moved up above Kittle. But you still have him behind guys like Kelsey and Mark Andrews. So Brayden, I know you're saying this, right? Brayden, what are you talking about? He can't be undervalued. He can't be underrated. I disagree. I love Kelsey. However, you look at so go back, and I wish I had the visual with me, and I've lost it. Go back and find the snap share that Travis Kelsey has had in preseason games compared to where he had it in the regular season, and it's almost identical. Every year that he had a larger snap share in preseason games and a larger target share, then it corresponded to a larger target share in the regular season. You know what he had this preseason? 55%. Compared to the 70 and 80% that he's been going at. So, Travis Kelsey, amazing. They don't have many targets, but he is getting up there in age. right? And he's regressed every year. I think he's a fantastic target, a great safe target at tight end. Mark Andrews, why do we love Mark Andrews, right? As fantasy people, why do we love Mark Andrews? I feel like you can give me an answer. It's a good answer because Mark Andrews is great. But why do we love Mark Andrews?
Touchdowns.
Touchdowns and
He's their only option.
boom, ding, ding, ding. We have a winner. He's their only option, right? We love Mark Andrews because he's their only option, and Lamar Jackson trusts him. I mean, Rashad Bateman's great, but and if he takes the leap this season, then you're going to see that regression from Mark Andrews. But let's say he doesn't. Mark Andrews is the glorified wide receiver one there. So now let's go to Kyle Pitts, who's for all purposes, let's say he's getting drafted as the tight end 3. You're getting him in maybe end of the second round, top of the third in some league drafts, right? So tight end 3. I argue that Kyle Pitts runs away with the tight end 1. Like, when I say runs away, I mean runs away. Because I think if you like Mark Andrews, you have to love Kyle Pitts. There is no one else in that offense. Cordero Patterson was made a star in that offense for the lack of options around him. And Drake London right now is nursing an injury, which hopefully isn't serious. But the fact that he's injured in preseason, if that sticks around, you're literally looking at just Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts broke rookie tight end records last year. A tight end doesn't go over 1,000 yards. He went over 1,000 yards, right? It's that thing of Kyle Pitts breaks the mold of tight ends because he's not a tight end. He is a wide receiver playing tight end, right? And so, and I know also what you're thinking. Let's say that maybe he's a good player, which he is. We all know he is. But let's say that maybe he's good enough to be tight end 1. Yeah, you're right, Brayden. He beats Mark Andrews. Okay, let's say he's above Mark Andrews. Let's give him that. How's he going to beat Travis Kelce? Travis Kelce has Patrick Mahomes passing to him. Kyle Pitts has Marcus Mariota, right? And I get it. However, let's run back to the last time Marcus Mariota played starting quarterback. So he played starting quarterback in Vegas, and he played starting quarterback also in Tennessee. So I'm gonna list a name for you. You remember this name? Delaney Walker. Delaney Walker, for all purposes, I gotta say it, not a great player. We've seen it. We've seen him with other quarterbacks. He's not a great player. He's not glorified as one of the best tight end prospects of all time. And yet, in 3 seasons with Marcus Mariota as a majority starter, Delaney Walker saw 343 targets, 2,778 yards, and 17 touchdowns. Then, in 2018, when Walker was hurt, backup tight ends still saw 82 targets. And in one game with the Raiders, Darren Waller, who is a fantastic player, 12 targets, 150 yards, and a touchdown. Marcus Mariota feeds his tight ends. And now he's been gifted with the best tight end he's ever seen. I'm saying that within this offense, you're going to have to throw 2-3 guys at Kyle Pitts to stop him from catching that ball, and they're not going to be able to do that with the other weapons that they have because they are semi-decent. Cordero Patterson showed he can be decent. Drake London, obviously a great talent, but they're not great enough to take the numbers away from Kyle Pitts, in my opinion, and I think he'll be the tight end 1. You can put it up on our proverbial board. He'll be the tight end 1 far and away, especially in PPR. And so I think, I mean, honestly, I would not draft him in the first for value, but if you're sitting there at second round and he's sitting there, I take him above Mark Andrews, and I take him above Travis Kelce if he's there in the second round.
Wow, you started off the first episode pretty hot with the Jamar Chase, T. Higgins slander, and now Kyle Pitts, tight end 1. Wow.
Tight end 1,
I
man.
mean, you had some compelling arguments, and I did run Lamar's name through the mud a little bit if you were there for the first episode, so I can't really say I mean, Marcus Mariota is not as good as Lamar, but passing wise, they might be similar. I mean, Lamar's not a very good passer, so uh, and I mean, it doesn't matter as much when you're tight end because Kyle Pitts is what, like 6'6". I mean, you're gonna be able to hit him. So I think it all just relies on how many touchdowns he gets this year because he had one touchdown last year. So there is
It's
some
a little
probably
yeah.
positive regression involved in that, but I still think Mark Andrews is a safer bet to finish tight end one. I agree. Travis Kelsey's getting a little up there in age. He's 32 now, I believe, something like that. So I think if you want to go safe, Mark Andrews first round. If you want to go for upside, take your shot on Kyle Pitts.
Take your shot. Take your shot. I mean, to me, it's like okay. I don't know. I see no reason why not to, right? Because he has a similar floor, in my opinion, to Mark Andrews, right?
What if at the end of the year the Falcons, sorry, not the Titans. He doesn't play for the Titans anymore. What if at the end of the year the Falcons average 14 points per game?
They
Would
won't.
you still would you are you sure?
That defense is terrible, and so
That
I'm saying
offense.
they're yeah. So they're going to have to be on that offense a lot. That's what I'm saying.
Do you think that offense can produce though? That's my biggest
20 points,
concern.
20 points a game at least,
20
and
points.
I think you're getting 3 touchdowns out of that. And I think that, I mean, it might not be one a game, right? But it's that kind of thing of he'll end the season with 10 touchdowns.
Double digit touchdowns.
I,
Okay.
I think 10 touchdowns and over 1,000 yards. You're sitting there. He's going to be the far and away tight end one, in my opinion.
I think this offense will be significantly worse than the Lions offense last year. And Jags offense. I don't know which one was worse. Whichever one was worse, I think they'll be close to the Jaguars, significantly worse than the Lions, and very inconsistent. But we'll see. Put it up on the board, Brayden.
It's on the board. It's on the proverbial board. We will get a board. I promise.
We will.
Um,
Yeah, we need one. It's going to be full by the time we get one.
I know. I do want to throw in. Before you go, if you're good with this, I had an honorable mention that I just want to throw in because I know we're getting in the list, and I just have to throw this in there. They didn't make my list, but I had to throw it in. Can I throw those in real quick?
Of course.
All right, so I know that I just talked about the guy who's going like tight end 3 and said he was undervalued. You should go for tight end 1. I talked a little bit about this last week, but guys like I just these are honorable mentions, so I won't touch on them too long. But guys like Devonte Adams and Tyreek Hill, the fact that they're going that low, like that they're getting discounted to the fact that you're drafting Devonte after running backs that you're kind of like maybe. I mean, I've seen so many drafts where Javante has gone way before, or like way before, 2 picks before Devonte. And to me, Javante has a great upside, but oh my gosh, his floor is what he did last year, which is, right? Where you have Devonte, I literally, you look at Stephon Diggs, and so you see wide receivers that switch teams, like Kenny Galladay, that fall apart. These guys are not Kenny Galladay. These guys are way better than Kenny Galladay. These guys are literally in the Stephon Diggs echelon, if not above. And you saw what we did with Stephon Diggs when he switched teams. Every fantasy analyst was throwing him under the bus. I mean, I remember that year I got him in, the 6th round? And it's that thing of, nobody wanted him. And then he went to an offense. And am I saying that Carr and Tua are ever going to be Josh Allen? No. But what I'm saying is these guys are good enough that if you're sitting there taking a running back or even a wide receiver like Jalen Waddle or T. Higgins that have, which I know right now they aren't going above them, but if you're sitting there and you're even considering it, stop. Get some help. Like, literally go because these guys are getting discounted because they're switching teams. And yes, I know Tua's arm kind of looks like a noodle sometimes, and that Derek Carr has had terrible coaching his whole career, and it may literally come to haunt him because he doesn't know up from down. But these guys literally, I think they could be they have wide receiver 1. If you're talking about Michael Thomas having wide receiver 1 potential, these guys literally are in that upper echelon of 5 guys that really could truly be that number 1. and I think that we're discounting them too much. All I'm saying, I'm not saying that they're necessarily undervalued where they're getting drafted, but if they fall, if you can get them at a discount, be like NSYNC, buy.
I think the
I
biggest
had to
thing with
throw
those
that in there.
guys
Um,
that was
I,
nice.
I had to throw that in there before we started going because I was like, man, I gotta like if you get anything from this, like I don't know what people are doing by just saying like, oh, Devontae Adams is gonna be rough. He's literally with his college quarterback, which we saw that work with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase last year. It just
Yeah.
it blows my mind.
I'll just add one quick thing. I think another, maybe even the biggest part of this is they have one of the safest, especially Devontae, if not the safest floor. So you got to hit on those early round picks, and like you said, Javonte being drafted above him, I know he's got the upside, but you don't want to miss on those picks. So why not take somebody that you know is going to get 100 targets a game or 100 targets a
Yeah,
year?
yeah, 100 targets again. Hey,
And
great floor,
if anybody's going to
great
do it, it's going to be Devonte.
exactly. Well, and like all this little teaser for who I'm going to talk about later. It's like if you're debating between getting, because everyone's trying to chase that JT, right? Everyone's trying to get the next Jonathan Taylor, and if
hmm
you're like really trying to get that, and you think that Javonte can be that guy, go for him. But in my opinion, there's a guy later that has that same situational like dependency and the draft capital and the skill that could become the next JT. Like if a couple dominoes fall the right way, that you can get 2 rounds later. So I'm like, yeah, go for the safe floor, unless you truly believe. Like if you're 100% saying, yeah, Javonte, or like if these guys aren't available and you want to go upside, go upside. But why do that when you can get a better, well, not better guy, but a guy with equal upside 2 rounds later? So we'll talk
Stay
about
tuned.
that when I get to that. But yeah, so go for it, Gavin. Who's your second guy?
My second guy is a man that has burned probably the majority of the players that play fantasy football. I know he's burned me before, uh, and he's actually probably not had a good season yet. But this is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. I know.
Boo! Boo! I'm leaving, bro. No way. What? Okay, continue. Continue. Mm.
I mean, this guy's consistently been drafted. I know his rookie year he was drafted as a first round pick. Last year, still being drafted, I believe, close to the third round, maybe fourth round. And now he's finally come back down to earth, and we know he's not the talent that everybody expected coming out of college. But now he's being drafted around RB 26, which I mean everybody said he's connected to that Kansas City Chiefs offense. So just that alone, he's got the upside that he puts together a couple weeks of big games, and he's gonna outperform that RB 26. So I mean, there's not much to say. He's got the receiving work. Isaiah Pacheco was getting a little bit of talk out of camp, but I'm not expecting him to do anything anytime soon. So, uh, yeah, I think if he can finally convert on those end zone tries, he can finish as an RB2 pretty easily.
So where would you say his height is?
5'10".
His ceiling. His ceiling. Where do you think his ceiling is?
Man, honestly, I don't want any part of him on my team, but I think he can finish as an RB2. Probably a low end RB2 though. He's
Okay.
he's not an interesting guy. He's kind of like a James Robinson of the past, or like a Josh Jacobs now, where you just know he's probably going to get touches, but he's not interesting.
I mean, both. Like James Robinson, at least to me, had like some security because they don't have anything in that. Like they didn't have anything in that offense.
Yeah.
But back in the day, but like even Jacobs, to me, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is one fumble away from getting benched, traded, or cut. So to me, it's a similar thing with Michael Thomas, right? Not that he doesn't want to play, but do I think he's going to play all 16 games of his own volition? Like to me, I know his draft capital wasn't as high as Trent Richardson, but it looks like the same thing. It looks like a guy who had like literally tantalizing skill, and Trent at least had some good like a good season.
Yeah.
one or two good seasons,
Yeah, at
right?
least one.
Yeah, and with Cleveland, and then he of course got traded and fell apart. But it's that kind of thing of I just to me they have too much. I mean, they kept Rojo. They kept Rojo, which puts a cap on all of those guys, in my opinion, right? Which my whole thing is, I saw a tweet earlier today from good old Late Round Podcast, JJ Zachariason, that said, look, if you believe in Isaiah Pacheco, the fact they kept Rojo shouldn't bother you because he needs to beat him out anyways, right? So, like, if they cut him, it means he beat him out. Even if he kept him, he still could have beat him out, right? So it's that whole thing of you shouldn't be worried. However, as a whole, for all of those running backs, I'm worried because they kept 4 running backs in the room. It's the same thing that I brought up with Sony, right? Where the fact that you're adding to the Chargers running back room, well, you kept 4 running backs in your room where you could have. Everyone thought that they were going to cut Rojo, right? It's like the vote of confidence for Elijah Mitchell that they gave by cutting Trey Sermon is they didn't give Clyde when they definitely could have, and in fact have been blowing the trumpet of a 7th round rookie. You know what I'm saying? It's
That's
that
true.
kind of thing of, and he doesn't have the receiving work because Jarek's there. I can't. I get what you're saying. Like I'm saying, oh yeah, if he falls immensely, and he's in the 9th, 10th round, take a fly on him. But oh man, if you're asking me to draft him in the 6th round, dead. I'd rather go wide receiver there.
I think he is in the same boat as David Montgomery right now, but in a better offensive situation. So I would rather let someone take David Montgomery and wait a round or two later and draft Clyde and hope for the best. Like I said, not a pick I want to make, not a pick I make very often, but if I need that upside guy um, as my RB3 or my first bench running back, why not try it?
Makes sense. That makes sense. Well, I'll jump on another running back. This is my 2 rounds later. So we talked about Javonte. 2 rounds later, same guy that I think has a JT like ascension this year.
The big
I'm not
words.
saying that he's going to have it. The possibility of having the JT like ascension this year, Travis Etienne, right? Which I know the situation is rocky. We talked about James Robinson. James Robinson is an amazing football player. However, let's go back. Marlon Mack was an amazing football player. And I know that JT got the job off of a Mack injury, right? Mack gets hurt that first week, JT gets the job. But if you remember, JT didn't run away with that job his first 10 weeks. It wasn't until the end of the season that he actually started putting together some numbers. In fact, they even threw in, what's his name? I'm blanking right now. Jordan Wilkins. They even threw in Jordan Wilkins for a while there because JT just wasn't playing all that well, to be completely honest. And then JT turned on the Jets and all of a sudden was just this star, right? And you see, so I'm not saying that ETN needs a Robinson injury, though, because then you see the subsequent year when Marlon Mack comes back, they're saying that he has the spring in his step, and they're saying, you know what, we might split some work here and there, and they didn't. They did not. That was all coach speak. So now, coming off of an injury, you see the coaching staff, Doug Peterson over in Jacksonville, is saying, you know what, we might make a split here, but James, we're going to let him recover fully. Even if he's ready for week 1, he won't have a full workload. And the fact that they're already saying that, it screams coach speak to me. It screams, we want to see what Travis has. And if Travis can go out in those first few weeks and put up even 100 yards total in any of those games, I don't think he looks back. I think that they give him the full three down job, and I think that he, with Trevor Lawrence, takes a huge leap this year. I think that Jaguar team is actually going to be somewhat decent. I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but I think they'll be competitive in a lot of games that last year they just were not competing in. I think that by the end of the season, they actually could make a run to get even within shouting distance of the playoffs. Within shouting distance. And I think that's going to be key. Because the other part of this, what makes him have that JT-like ascension, is the fact that his schedule, I mean, what have we learned in the last few years? David Montgomery has won leagues off of his cake schedule at the end of the season. We look last year at guys. Oh, I'm blanking on who because we talked about this a little bit earlier. I'm blanking on who I brought up. Oh, Antonio Gibson last year. Literally, cake schedule at the end of the year. And we saw it. He went off. I mean, he was getting touched. I mean, it was insane. So now let's look at Travis Etienne's schedule from weeks 13 to 17. Detroit, Tennessee, Dallas, the Jets, and the Texans. Right? Detroit could be better. They have Aiden Hutchinson. They have this revamped defense. Right? They could be actually solid. But you're putting Jacksonville and Detroit in a game, it's going to be competitive. Right? They're going to be of an semi-equal level, in my opinion. Tennessee, division rivals, and in my opinion, not a great defense. Dallas, I'm a big Cowboys guy, and oh my gosh, the Dallas defense is infuriating. Watch Dallas lose that game. And I mean, just Dallas is infuriating in general. I was going through the season trying to be like, oh, I think the Cowboys are going to go like this. I charted that game against the Jaguars a loss just because it felt like a trap game, right? Dallas is always awful against teams that are like, bleh. So it's that thing. And yes, they had a great season last year, and I hope that Micah Parsons is not the next coming of Vic Beasley Jr., right? Where he has like amazing young career and then just falls off the planet, like just falls apart. I hope that that's not the case. But if they take a step back, cake. And then you look at those last 2 weeks, 16 and 17, where most of us are finishing our season. Jets, Texans. If I'm sitting there and I have Travis Etienne, I'm licking my chops. I mean, I am just so ready because I'm saying, okay, if he can get this job, if he really can just become a 3-down guy, it's so like the road is paved for him. He just has to run. And so I'm saying you have a guy that could really have a top 10 or top 8 running back like ceiling there, and you're drafting him in round 4, round 5. I mean, if you're looking at Javonte and you're saying, oh yeah, it's literally the same situation, and in my opinion, the same ceiling, if not even a slightly higher ceiling for Etienne for the lack of options around him. Meanwhile, Denver is just filled with options, and Russ historically doesn't check down to his running backs. So, I mean, of course, I'm sitting here with both of these guys on my team, so it's a little upside for me. But, right, so it's that kind of thing of like, if I'm sitting there and you could get a dependable guy like Devontae in round 2, do that. Don't get Javonte and snag Etienne on the end around.
Yeah, I think if your JT like ascension means running back 2, then I'm on board. The only thing I would agree with about JT like ascension is that Texans game late in the playoffs. JT likes to drop 30 on them usually first or second round of playoffs. So I think that's a possibility just because that Texans defense is going to be terrible. But man, I don't know. I don't think this Jaguars offense is going to be very much better than they were last year. They're going to be better, hopefully, because they were pretty dang bad last year. But I don't think he's going to get goal line work. And if James Robinson gets that goal line work, his ceiling's going to be capped. So JT like ascension might have to wait at least another year.
I thought I swayed you. I thought I had you.
Nope. I mean, I'm a Travis Etienne owner as well, and it's not looking good, honestly, on my end. I think James Robinson comes back, and even if he doesn't get the work, the full workload, I still think he's going to get goal line, and it's going to be tough for Travis Etienne to finish as an RB1 for sure.
So week 1, they play Washington, right? Who already it looks like Chase Young isn't going to be back for that game.
Oh wow, I didn't.
Oh yeah, it's looking like he's not going to be back for that game. let's say ETN, let's say they come back and they say, you know what, James Robinson isn't playing, ETN gets full workload. We'll be doing, some buy low, sell highs around that time. If he gets over 100 yards, are you selling high on him immediately, or are you holding out because of that schedule?
Give me some players in return for the sell
All right.
high.
If I offer you Javante for ETN after week 1, because Javante goes out and gets like 40 yards, and Melvin and him have a 50-50 split in week 1, you taking Javante for ETN?
I think I'm taking that. Yeah.
Wow.
Just I think the
Wow.
offense, Javante is going to have more touchdown upside.
Debo Samuel, with his hamstring that's hurt right now.
Ooh,
Um, you taking that? Or sorry, not hamstring. Sorry, knee contusion. You taking that?
I think I want to wait on that and see the Trey Lance connection because out of camp everything's saying Trey Lance and Brandon Ayuk. So Debo's looking a little risky right now.
Yeah, Ayuk was on my honorable mention. I took him off. He's on the honorable mention, but I think everyone's figured out that he's looking like he could be the guy.
Yeah, he's not looking underrated anymore. I mean, last year he was being drafted pretty high too. So hopefully he finally makes it.
Yeah, man. Well, I believe in ETN, and we'll
I'm
see.
glad you
So
do. I mean,
we're
I'm
getting
gonna need to keep convincing me because I'm not looking forward to having him as my RB two.
gotta make it work, right? It's
Yep.
gonna work.
Yeah. Upside.
Outside, yeah. The great. We're getting eventually, like, so we'll get your third guy, and then we get my third guy, and then we get my last 2 picks are boonie picks, bro. Like they are literally, they are. Well, I'm excited for you to hear them because I think you're gonna be like, where did you pull that name out of? Like, did you
Oh
just take
gosh.
a random, like a hat, and just be like, random NFL players? Colt McCoy? No. Like it's so. I think you'll be surprised. But anyway, hit me with
I
your
think
third,
you got some DFS or best ball players, something like that.
dude. Trace McSorley, man, he's gonna be great.
Hey, we need to play the Trace McSorley soundtrack.
Trace McSorley, he'll be
Uh,
great. All
yeah,
right, hit me with your third, bro.
yeah. My third actually plays for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know. I'm.
If you say J Rob right now, we're gonna have an issue.
Yeah, James Robinson. He's gonna get a full
No.
workload.
Let me guess.
No.
Christian Kirk.
Yeah, the man that just got paid.
Mm-hmm.
Cha-ching. Yep. Classic. Man, he set the bar very high for the wide receiver market this year, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with how much they paid him, but where he's being drafted right now, he's definitely undervalued. So, man needs to get paid in ADP this year. That's what he needs to get paid in.
Well,
All right.
here's
Anyway,
my question. Well, I was gonna say before you go on, are you worried about him not? I mean, I'm worried about him being the next Galladay.
ah man, that's a fair point. Yeah, I think their offenses are going to be very similar. I'm just hoping that Trevor Lawrence can take a step forward. And honestly, I think a lot of the problems with the Giants was their head coach, and so everything that I've heard is that the Jaguars have it all together and they're looking a lot better than they were last year. So
You
I'm
believe in
expecting.
Doug?
I don't know if I fully
Doug?
believe, but I'm more than Urban Meyer for sure. That oh man,
Everybody
what a
camp Doug Peterson, man. He's the real deal, right?
that's true. I guess if I liked Nick Foles, I have to kind of like Doug Peterson.
That's the rule.
Oh, so yeah, Christian Kirk being drafted around the middle of the eighth round, I believe. Like I said, he got that bag, so obviously they were looking for him and wanted to fill that wide receiver one role. And I don't know if Christian Kirk is an alpha wide receiver one, but I think he's good enough to be a wide receiver one for a team. They might need to draft someone in the future, but I think for right now he's good enough to be the wide receiver one. And I mean, they just traded Laviska Shenault as well, so who else do they have at wide receiver? I mean,
Marvin, Marvin.
I love Marvin. Man, that guy's been in the league 15 years now. It seems like he's been on every team. Uh, Christian Kirk's still young, and Trevor Lawrence is getting better. I think he's going to make not a significant leap, but I think a good enough leap to help Christian Kirk be a low end wide receiver two, maybe.
Not wide receiver one?
Oh, absolutely not. No, that offense is not good enough. There will not be any to say Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson like ascension for Christian Kirk.
I mean, I get what you're saying. It's, to me, with Brandon Cooks, like if you like Brandon Cooks, then you kind of have to love Christian Kirk, kind of thing.
Hmm.
They both show up numbers. Of course, Cooks has that longevity that he shows up some great numbers, but Christian Kirk has he has some great skill, and they're both in similar situations where there's not really anybody around them. And I think Trevor Lawrence is better than Davis Mills. I know, shoot me, but I think he is. Um, so to me, it's like, yeah, I get what you're saying, and I think if you're playing the card with Brandon Cooks, which you definitely should because he's consistent and just makes it work, then I think if you're of that mindset of like, yeah, I'm gonna draft Brandon Cooks, and I think you draft Christian Kirk too, because so I get it. Yeah, I think I actually agree with you 100%. I think his upside is. I would even say like mid wide receiver too, like wide receiver 18. I'll just throw it out there, 17.
Wow,
I think he has that kind of upside because he's a big play guy. He doesn't need a lot of catches,
that's true
uh,
too. Yeah.
and and so if they're feeding, and he's I think you get a lot of end zone looks. I think honestly, and maybe I'm just overhyping the Jags. I think they're going to take a bigger leap this year. I don't know. I just think they're going to be competitive, and so I see what you're saying. I like it.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying this, but we talked about Javante and Etienne, and then now Brandon Cooks and Christian Kirk. It's like the Jags are the great value brand, which I never thought we'd be say wait a couple rounds and draft a Jags player, but this might be the year.
Whole team, take them. Take the whole team, guys.
Right.
Take
Just
if Yeah, invest in the Jaguars. That's the key to success here. And of course, this will be the little button that we put and we post online, right? It'll be like me saying, yes, the Jaguars are the best decision you can make for your fantasy football team. And everyone will come after me. But
it'll
do
be
it.
great. Also, one more thing. Christian Kirk, I didn't see his stats for every game, but I know against the Steelers, he was targeted on 36% of the targets. So a 36% target share. I mean, similar to Brandon Cooks. So you were correct in that.
I like it. It's a good move. So speaking of target monsters, which volume is king. We've talked about that. I want that on a shirt,
Yeah,
honestly. Volume is
you need a
king.
crown or something.
Crown. You put a volume crown, right? Volume is king, and we're loudly mistaken, so we use volume here, anyways. But volume's king, and I think the best opportunity there, that the guy that really has all of that, Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney, man, it's Mooney time. It's Mooney time, right? It's to me. I mean, you saw it last year, right? He had those big games. I think he only had like 2 games over 100 yards, which isn't great. But he had a lot of targets. And that's what we're looking for, right? And we're looking for... We had poorest quarterback play from them last year. But I don't know if you saw Justin Fields in that last preseason game. Woo! He was looking nice. So nice. And I know it's preseason. But man, if Justin Fields can take even a minute leap, right? If they're throwing 200 yards a game, I challenge you. Actually, quick question. Besides David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert, who is on that offense, Gavin? I know one guy.
Cole Kmet.
There you go. And?
Is there number two Equanimous St. Brown?
Dang it. Yeah, you're right. But what I'm saying, okay, but is St. Brown really going to take targets? If he is, I will literally... Here's the thing. I will take a picture of Darnell Mooney and I will rip it up and eat it. Like, I will eat that paper if St. Brown out-targets Mooney in the first game of the season. Barring injury.
Who are they playing? Who are they playing week one?
That's a great question. The week one, they're playing San Fran.
Ah, man. Yeah, he probably won't.
He
I was
won't.
hoping it'd be like Jalen Ramsey or something.
Well, and he won't. So it's that thing of like, and they've already talked about using him in the rushing game, which I'll get to later of another team that's looking to do that with a guy, and why they're doing that. Very fun.
Mm.
But it's that kind of thing. They're already looking at using him in the rushing game. He's both a big play threat, but he also can play. I mean, I'm seeing a big year 3 leap from Darnell Mooney in the way that, I mean, I see he could be the wide receiver 7, wide receiver 8. Like, I'm saying that high. He really could be what Allen Robinson used to be times 1.5 in that offense, because he actually has. If Justin Fields can take even a minute leap, I think he's hitting over 100 yards a game consistently. I mean, I'm seeing, a bold take here. I'm seeing 1,400 yards and 8 touchdowns.
Do you think
So,
Darnell Mooney is a better wide receiver than Al Robinson?
100%. I think
Man,
Allen
you're
Robinson. I think Allen Robinson was propped up by the fact that no one else besides Allen Hurns was in Jacksonville. Signed the big contract to go, much like the Kenny Galladay contract we talked about a lot. I don't know why he keeps coming up, but
yeah,
he
he's not
signed the
very
big
well.
contract to go to Chicago, where no one else was.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Allen Robinson has always been the guy for the lack of any other talent around him. Not necessarily. So now that he's in Los Angeles, right? I think he'll be decent. I'm 800 yards, but I don't think. I think he has. To me, he's like a slower. He's like if old Des Bryant, mixed with DK now. Like he's like a slower, more confused DK Metcalf. Like DK, he's
What
decaf
was that
DK.
comp?
He's decaf DK. He really is. He's like
Decaf
Jerry
DJ.
Henry DK Metcalf. Compared to like that's just I think he's what. You know what? I'll say this. It's like comparing. Well, he's like what AJ Brown kind of. And to me, Allen Robinson is what AJ Brown is half the time, which is like a big body that can catch like 6 catches, 37 yards. And then AJ Brown shows what AJ Brown is, and he turns into 120 yards, and he's a beast.
Yeah.
But it's that half. I feel like that's what Allen Robinson is. I'll eat those words. I know I will.
Yeah, I don't know if I can side with you on that one, but
But I think Mooney's better, and I think that Mooney showed that last year.
I don't hate the Mooney hype, obviously, because I drafted him and sadly sent him to your team before the season started. So I think he's going to be good, but wide receiver 7, that might be a little steep with that offense.
Maybe it could be, but I really it's that thing of volume is king. I love volume, and to me, there's almost no other wide receiver that's going to see the same type of volume that Mooney's going to see.
Yeah, you could be right. He could lead the league in targets, honestly. I think it's very good possibility.
If I remember what my research was, I'd bring it up, but I don't. But there's this target share. I'd encourage you to look up the target share of last year. In the first 6 games compared to the last 6 games, and then air percentage yards, and Mooney's in the top 5, I believe, if I'm correct, in both of them, in both air yards and target share.
I believe
so
it.
it's that kind of thing of it's a promising thing to look at, especially as Fields was starting to come onto the field. So even though Dalton was still there and his best games were with Dalton, if Fields can even take even a minute step, I think it's a win.
So you said he can be the wide receiver 7, but where do you have him projected?
I'd probably put him probably like wide receiver 13, 14, high-end wide receiver 2.
Okay. Yeah, it's possible.
Yep.
Probably put him a little bit lower, but yeah, wide receiver like 16 is probably where I'm at. So we're close.
All right, hit me with your number 4.
Oh man, you talking about geriatrics earlier. We got to throw in Tom Brady.
Woo! Oh man. what is it? What year is this? 2000, 2008, 2009?
Man, he was still geriatric in 2008. He was like 40 in 2008.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
you're right. He's like 60 now. Yeah.
yeah, this man, him and the dinosaurs are walking around together. But I mean, Tom
No,
Brady.
I think Bill's still in New England.
Oh gosh, Tom is man. Everybody is always disrespecting the goat. Every year it seems like he's being undervalued. People are getting drafted ahead of him, and all these talk show people that are getting paid millions of dollars are saying this is the year he's gonna fall off, and then he comes and wins the Super Bowl. This man is never going to fall off. I think he will just win a Super Bowl and ride off into the sunset, and you will never see a bad game from Tom Brady. So he's currently being drafted as a QB8, which it's astonishing to me. I know he had some problems this offseason, and I've seen some things on Twitter and YouTube saying, "Oh, Tom Brady was off doing the Masked Singer and all of this stuff." But when Tom Brady's on the field and he's locked in, there's no chance he finishes as a QB8. I think last year he finished um, as the QB2 or QB3, respectively, depending on your scoring system. So even if he does somehow regress, which everybody predicts every year and he never does, even if he does regress, you're still going to finish higher than QB8. I think QB5 is his floor. Even with the weapons he has, I know Chris Godwin's injured coming back, but they still have Mike Evans there. Their offensive line is still good enough, and Tom Brady made Julian Edelman a star. He made Wes Welker a star. He's gonna find guys. I mean, even Scotty Miller was relevant for a few games. So there's no way to predict him being under QB5. I think we need to give the goat his respect, and someone always gets him, and they're rewarded for it.
Well, and I get what you're saying, right? Because according to Fantasy Pros, I pulled it up just to help. Um, he was the third ranked quarterback last year, right?
Yeah.
And he threw for over 5,000 yards. I mean, he was the passing yards leader last year.
Yeah, I think he had a career year in passing yards and passing touchdowns last year, and people are drafting him lower than where he finished. It makes no sense to me.
Well, yeah, and you have Justin Herbert who threw for 5,014, and then Tom Brady threw for 5,316.
Gosh.
So now my thing is though, that's 300 less yards or 300 more yards for Tom, 300 less for Herbert. Herbert finished above Tom, and it's because of both like touchdowns, but also rushing. Right? I know
Mhm.
Herbert doesn't really rush all that much, but he rushes more than Tom. And so my only worry, I don't think that offense is going to regress all that much. I think it's going to be a great offense. I love the addition of Julio Jones. Again, I might come back to bite that. But I actually think that Julio is going to be serviceable if he can stay healthy, and that's always a big if.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to be serviceable. In fact, I actually think he could be someone that's underrated that could have been on the show.
Yeah.
I think Godwin's going to be great coming back. I don't think he's actually going to see his normal numbers until like week 4. I think Evans is going to be great per usual. I think that offense is pretty well off. My only worry is he doesn't get those rushing yards. And so even if he has a pedestrian by all measures season, or even a good season, but throws for 4,500 yards, I'm thinking that he's sitting at QB8, right? Because he does not rush. He does not rush at all. And I agree. I think that Tom actually, I think this could be the year that he finishes, but I don't think he's going to finish on a Peyton Manning, broken arm. I think he's going to finish on a Super Bowl win of his own volition. Because we have seen him play one bad game. And that one bad game was the game against the Dolphins in which they lost in the playoffs. Dolphins, right, where he threw the pick at the end of the game, left the Patriots, then came Tampa.
Was it against the Dolphins?
It was either Dolphins or Bills, and I'm blanking right now because it's 11:44 in New York. So.
Yeah, I cannot remember either.
But it's the we saw him play one bad game, and we haven't seen him play a bad game since. So I agree. I do agree. It's that kind of thing of I'm a little worried about his lack of rushing. because that's the new base in quarterbacks, right? You
Hmm.
want the dual threat quarterback. There's this whole theory of Konami code. You want the Konami code. You want the guy who can break the system. And there's enough. There used to be only a few. There's enough of those guys now. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson. Right? There's enough of those guys now that it almost feels foolish to not draft one of those guys, almost purely based off of upside.
Yeah, I agree with that. Tom's he actually surprisingly rushes more than you would think of what 45-year-old man would in the NFL, and he's gonna get 3 or 4 rushing touchdowns like he always does on those QB sneaks. But I do agree, rushing you want to aim for that ceiling. But on the other hand, you tend to dislike Leonard Fournette. So if Leonard Fournette falls off and he can't run the ball, they're gonna have to pass the ball to win games. And I think that just is gonna make Tom throw more, like we saw last year. They ran the ball fine with Leonard Fournette, but when they needed a big play or they needed to move the change, they're putting the ball in Tom Brady's hands, and he's gonna make the play. So I feel like he's pretty safe. His fall off is going to be 4,500 yards minimum. So, and like you said, if he finishes as a QB8, you get him where you drafted him. No harm, no foul. That's his floor, and he's got obviously upside to be QB2, QB3. So,
That's true. That's true. I like that. And also, what are you talking about with? No, bro. They're trading for Kareem Hunt.
oh gosh, okay,
That would be the most Tom Brady thing ever. Is to they just casually trade for Kareem Hunt,
yeah, that is true. They would.
and then all of a sudden Kareem rush like they would, and he wouldn't even do that well. He would just end the season really well. Like he would have like 2 weeks where he just fell off the face, and then all of a sudden he's like the best player ever. I it never
That
makes
or
sense.
he
That's
would
what always happens.
he would do that, or he would take his jersey off in the middle of the game and run off the field and go crazy.
Oh no, that's Julio mid-season.
Okay, yeah, I can see that too.
Actually, if anybody's doing that, it's Lenny. If anybody's doing that, it's Lenny. What are we talking about?
Oh man, it's gonna be
Lenny and
dangerous.
Michael Thomas will be trying to top that for a long time. Um,
All right, who do you have
great. Well
next?
then,
Oh, this is your pick.
okay. So I'll save my exciting one for the end, which is a guy who I think could come out of nowhere and almost come out of nowhere in like a way that you're like, wait, I didn't think of him. And then I have a little bit of news with him, so I'll save him for the last one. Right now, here's my first dart throw. I had a guy who was texting me the other day regarding his league because Zach Ertz is looking questionable for Week 1, right? And he was asking me who of these free agent tight ends should I put a waiver claim in, and I listed this name, and he laughed at me, and I think he shouldn't have. So I threw this name in here. Bengals tight end Hayden Hurst. Look, if you're drafting a tight end, so if you wait on tight end, if you don't go get Kyle Pitts, and you're sitting there and you're at the end of the draft and you're like, well, my tight end right now is Cole Kmet, or my tight end is, enter any name that is not Kyle Pitts, Travis Kelce, or Mark Andrews. I think taking a flyer on a guy like Hayden Hurst has the potential to be like tight end 8. And I'll tell you why. Right? So if you're sitting there and you're picking up Hayden Hurst for free, because he's not getting drafted right now, if you're picking up Hayden Hurst for free, he has the potential to be tight end 8, tight end 7. I mean, you see how like easy it is to get there if you can just get 50 yards and a touchdown. I mean, okay, so Fantasy Pros put this up, and I like the way that they said it. Former Falcon, who honestly was amazing. I mean, we're talking about Mark Andrews. He was Mark Andrews' little brother over in Baltimore, and then they traded him, to everyone's surprise, to Atlanta, to where he did semi-decent, and then the team fell apart that year. That's the year that they fired Dan Quinn, and then they went and got Kyle Pitts, And so what is he supposed to do, right? So it's that whole thing of all of a sudden he's always been usurped at every position, but he's always done decently well in his position. But I'm not really worried about Hayden Hurst, the actual talent. He has some talent there. I really don't care about that. I care about the position he's in. He's entering Cincinnati's offense, which I already said is like going bound for some regression, but still, CJ Uzama was rendered actually relevant last year. CJ Uzama. Like, Uzama's route participation last year was 78%, which is ranked 4th highest among tight ends in 2021. So even if you put Hayden Hurst on that offense, right, you look at it, and yeah, being on the field doesn't always translate to fantasy production, but you look at it like Uzama last year had a 13% target rate per route run, which it ranked last among tight ends. But you see Hurst last year ranked 15%, which is not much better. So it's not exactly like really, really great, but we were still using Uzama for that little percent of target share. And that's where I'm going in the fact that, like, if you can put Hayden Hurst's talent up there, Joe Burrow is going to find him, and he's going to get touchdowns. Because as much as I hate on that offense, the Cincinnati offense is going to be somewhat decent, and Hayden Hurst is their only option at tight end. They did not draft anybody, right? They did not put anything into the draft, and right now he's getting drafted really maybe in the last round, not at all, but he's only 1 year removed from when he was the tight end 9 in 2020. So I think that he really could be, you know, a sneaky tight end 6, tight end 7 for a guy that's getting undrafted. I say, you know, take a flyer on him and really, like, go for it, because I think you have a guy that can fill in on your bye weeks or even start depending on the matchup.
Yeah, I don't hate that pick. I think Hayden Hurst was their first or second round pick by the Ravens a few years ago,
Second?
something like that. So he's got the talent. I just think it's funny that you're willing to say Jamar Chase is not a first round. Yeah, that's crazy. You're willing to say Jamar Chase is not a top 10 receiver, but yet Hayden Hurst will be a top 10 tight end. So
tight end's a lot harder to, or tight end's a lot easier to get in the top 10 than it is wide receiver.
No, that's true. I just think that's a funny take. But yeah, I agree.
There's a lot of mouths to feed, so, and I think Hurst is one of them, right?
Yeah, why not take a shot on Hurst? I mean, after those top 5 tight ends, you're just hoping to get a touchdown every week, and you try to find the player that can have the most upside for a touchdown. And I think the Bengals offense has the highest upside as any other offense, so why not take a shot on Hurst?
Yeah. Like, if you're sitting there between Tunyon and Hurst, which, like, Tunyon also has some upside, but we've seen what he can do with tight end, take Hurst.
Yeah. I think either one's interchangeable. I mean, like I said, after the top 5, go for the team they think is going to score the most points that week and hope their tight end catches a pass.
All right, so who's your last guy, your 5th guy?
I think we talked about him a little bit last week. It's another player that changed teams this offseason, Hollywood Brown.
Woo! He was on my honorable mention. I like that.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I know you're a big DeAndre Hopkins believer, so I didn't know how you'd feel about this take, but Marquise Brown is similar to DeAndre Hopkins, at least for the first 6 weeks, where there's not much around him, wide receiver or tight end wise, and he's matching up with his college quarterback again. So same thing with, like, a lot of people have concerns when wide receivers are changing teams and going to a new quarterback, but they've had a connection before, so I don't think it'd be very difficult for them. And so for the first 6 weeks, I can easily see Marquise Brown as a top 5 wide receiver, and I just hope that when DeAndre Hopkins, he can carry at least wide receiver 2 numbers throughout the rest of the season. So he's being drafted as the last wide receiver 2, wide receiver 24 right now. So, I mean, his floor, I think, is wide receiver 24. And if for some reason Marquise Brown becomes the number 1 or stays the number 1 when DeAndre Hopkins comes back, he easily finishes as a top 12 wide receiver. So also last year, I mean, we'll bring up Lamar Jackson again and how bad he is at throwing the ball. I don't know why we keep bringing him up too. He's kind of like Kenny Galladay. I guess he's more relevant than Kenny Galladay, but uh, Lamar Jackson was his quarterback last year, and I believe through the first 5 weeks of the season, he was the wide receiver 5 in non PPR. So he's going to what I think, and you might or may not agree, is a better quarterback, at least passing the ball. Um, Marquise Brown is a deep target, and Kyler Murray was ranked the number third deep pass quarterback last year. So he fits the scheme perfectly too. So I mean, it looks like the stars are all aligning for Marquise Brown. I think DeAndre Hopkins is bound for regression a little bit. I know we talked about him a little bit earlier, but I think he's getting up in that age where he's still going to be dominant. He's got hands, but I think he's slowing down a little bit. And Marquise Brown will be the future number one. They traded, I believe, a first round pick for him in the draft. Yeah. Um, so obviously they want him to be the number one, the future number one. They wouldn't give up that first round pick if they didn't believe in him. So
Yeah, yeah. Look, I can't sit here and say I love Devontae Adams. Um, I mean, I love Devontae Adams more as a talent, but I can't sit here and be like, yeah, and he is a college quarterback, and then hate this.
mhm.
I like it. I think I disagree with you on the floor because honestly, I've been burned by him so many times, so I do have a little bit of a
Yeah.
pain there. I think his floor is literally non-existent. I mean, I think he literally could just come out and get 20 yards, and just the team just doesn't throw it. Like I don't think that's going to happen, but we've seen guys like I mean Rondale got a ton of hype last year,
Mhm.
um, and
Yeah,
then
I was thinking about Rondell Moore putting him in here, but I'm pretty sure he just got injured, so I think he's questionable for week one.
yeah, well, and but you have him, but like what I'm saying is like you had him getting hype, and then AJ Green came in, and no
Mhm.
one was talking about him, and all of a sudden he was actually serviceable,
That's
right?
what
So it's that kind of thing of I want to believe in Marquise Brown so much, and I like him. I especially like him for these first few weeks.
mhm.
Maybe you're able to sell high on him and get a guy that can like be a consistent starter week in week out. But to me, his floor is so low, especially with that Arizona offense that is consistently like hot or cold. I mean, that whole Arizona team is hot or cold. It's just that's the one thing that I'd be worried about is the fact that his historically he either gets and you're right he was with Lamar Jackson, but historically he either gets 120 yards or he gets 10, right? So I would just be worried about that, but I do agree with you. Like his upside to me is a top 10 wide receiver. Um, and if you're drafting at wide receiver 24 and you're trying to choose between like him, who's going in that area? Do you know off the top of your head?
I actually don't off the top of my head. I think I'll throw some names out there. Would you rather have him or who we talked about earlier, Darnell Mooney?
I think I'd rather have Darnell just because of volume.
Okay. Him or Gabe Davis?
I'd rather have him
Okay.
than Gabe. So yeah, and on here he's around Elijah Moore, here being Yahoo. He's around Elijah Moore,
Bateman.
Darnell Mooney, Ayuk, and Judy. And he's lower than Bateman by a solid 9 ranking
So
spots.
what about him or Bateman?
So to me, honestly, he's lower than Juju by 12 spots. I put him on the same thing with Juju. I think I like Bateman just a little bit more than both of them. I think they like Juju and him both have similar upside where it could be super super high, but both of them have similar floors where it could be super super low. So if you're trying to choose between drafting Juju a full round before him, um, wait and see if you can get Marquise because I like that. I think they're equal.
I think the another thing with Marquise is, like I said, with the deep ball ability, I think he fits the scheme perfectly. And we've seen in Baltimore, he does have those weeks where he has 50 yards, but he also has weeks where he gets 4 targets and has over 100 yards because he catches one ball and takes it to the house. So um, I'm hoping those air yards will connect a few more times, and all he needs is a couple passes, and he's scoring touchdowns.
Yeah.
And we're not even talking about DeAndre Hopkins' injury history. I mean, if he hops out more than 6 games, his floor is, I mean, it's got to be at least high upside wide receiver 2 with that floor.
Yeah, you're not wrong. So, oh wait, are you ready?
I'm ready. Oh,
This is the guy.
here we go.
This is. It's
The
getting
final
big.
one.
Okay. Hear me out. This is a kind of a. Oh wait, this one scares me a little bit, but hear me out.
I
I was
already know
talking
this
to
one's going on the board.
my friend who's a big Packers fan, up here in New York. He and I had this conversation up about this guy, and he told me I was crazy for thinking this. So obviously I'm a genius. So Amari Rogers, I think
You really
is
did
being
just pull this one out of a hat.
I pulled this one out of a straight hat.
I
This
don't
one,
even know
well,
where
to
he's
me,
playing.
think about it. Okay, so last year he gets all of this hype as the next Randall Cobb, right? So I'll take you on a trip. Last year he gets all the hype as the next Randall Cobb. They spend solid draft capital on him, and then he comes in, doesn't really do anything, but he gets under Randall Cobb's tutelage, right? He's been under Randall Cobb for an entire year. Now, we've seen wide receivers with Aaron Rodgers. Rookies don't do anything. Historically, rookies do not do anything with Aaron Rodgers. However, players that have experience in that system, have experience working with Aaron Rodgers, historically do well. And recently in an interview with Sammy Watkins, Sammy was saying that the one thing that differs Aaron Rodgers from every other quarterback that he's played with, which he's played with Lamar Jackson, he's played with Patrick Mahomes, he said Aaron Rodgers was on another level. Not because he's necessarily a better quarterback, but because he tells his wide receivers, like, if the play's falling apart, just go. Like, do what you want to do, and I'll follow you. Which is completely different, right? That's completely different from most systems, especially from college systems. So you see these guys coming in their first year, and they struggle. I love Sammy Watkins. I love Sammy Week 1 Watkins. And so, right, like, you could have a winner right there. But he's also in that system for the first time. Probably not. Amari Rogers, though, has been there for a full year. And so I start doing some digging, right? I'm like, what happened to Amari Rogers? So recently, in a news article, Matt LaFleur said that he's planning on using Amari Rogers in a Debo-like role, both playing him at wide receiver and running back. Because, Gavin, they cut every running back off their team except Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. And they're saying that Aaron Jones is going to be the wide receiver 1? Well, he has to be running back 1 because there's no running backs on that team. They're saying that both these guys are 1A and 1A. Literally, they're one hit away from playing Amari Rogers at running back. Right? You saw the success of Cordero Patterson, right? The hybrid running back is a thing. The wide back is the thing of the future. It's the new Konami code, right? It's the rushing quarterback for the skill position. And I think that you look at the team, the Packers saw themselves get beat by the 49ers last year in the playoffs. And they saw a dynamic player like Deebo Samuel and said, you know what? We can create a guy like that in Amari Rogers. He's been in our system for a year. And right now you have this absolute unknown at who's going to be the number 1 guy. Amari Rogers is going undrafted, right? So why not pick him up? See week 1 if he's playing in wideout sets, if he's playing in 3 wide sets, if he's playing at running back, right? They're going to use him. They're obviously scheming him in. There's no reason why he should be going undrafted when guys like Dobbs and Watkins and other Watkins and even Lazard are going like at pretty good draft capital, right? If you're really going to throw a dart there, why is Amari Rogers not getting mentioned? that Rodgers to Rodgers connection could actually be a genuinely good one this year. Um, and he could full on usurp Randall Cobb and become a legitimate 1,000-yard contender.
Well, it sounds like Matt LaFleur's pretty confused. Maybe he's getting Aaron Jones and Rodgers mixed up, saying Aaron Jones gonna be the wide receiver one and Rodgers gonna be the RB one. But
Matt LaFleur took some of the Aaron Rodgers psychedelics. That's what I
yeah,
think.
him and Ron Washington have been spending too much time together. Man, I was not prepared for that one. I have not done my research on Amari Rodgers. I'm gonna be honest, I did not even know he played for the Packers. So, man, if you hit on that, I will give you a lot of credit, and I will no longer give you fair takes because the only thing I will add to that is I know we talked about Dobbs or Dubs or however you say Romeo. I don't know what round he was, but wide receiver rookie for the Packers. Um, he has been getting a lot of hype out of camp, and the biggest thing that they were saying was, like you said, um, rookie wide receivers and young wide receivers in an offense like Jordy Nelson and like Devontae Adams take a few years to fully develop or be used how they should be used. And I don't remember if it was Rogers or one of the coaches, but they were saying that Dobbs was not getting that rookie treatment, and so uh, I think he may be their um, whatever, I guess, a Debo Samuel esque player this year. But if not, then sure, take your shot. I honestly don't want any part of that wide receiver group because there's no telling who that wide receiver one's going to be.
And so my thing is, if you have an empty roster spot, like right, if you had rostered a guy like Trey Sermon for some reason, like if your league's super deep, and now you're sitting there and you're like, I don't necessarily love him on the Eagles, or you're sitting there with Jalen Rager who just got traded to Minnesota, and you're like, you know what, he's fighting for the number 3 role. I don't necessarily love it. Cool, cut him, pick up Amari Rodgers, and just see week 1, see what happens. Right? That's what I'm like. To me, it's a guy who's completely getting overlooked. And even in, like, I'm not necessarily saying that in 18 leagues you should pick him up, but like 10 to 12, why not take a flyer on him? If you're going to take a flyer on Christian Watkins or Dobbs or anybody out there like that, why isn't Amari Rodgers getting the credit? You know what I'm saying? Where I'm like, especially with last year, with guys taking him in round 16, I mean, people were like, he has to be the number 2, and then he wasn't because he disappeared. Because rookies don't do well in that system. Most first years don't.
Yeah,
So,
I think somebody is going to pay off in that offense. It's just who will it be?
yeah. And I think like the cheapest lottery ticket might end up being the best one.
Hey, that's a fair point.
Yeah. So, awesome, dude. Well, it's been great talking with you as usual. I love doing this. Do you have any closing points before we wrap it up and say goodbye until next week? Well, so for everyone listening, we are going to try to get at least 2 episodes out a week. But of course, that'll get more scheduled as the season begins. But we'll definitely get you one next week. But anything you got, Gavin?
No, we'll see y'all next week.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Peace.
See ya.